This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
So, thank you everyone for coming. Thanks everyone for coming today. So nice to see so many people take out time from work and their busy schedules to come and learn some Torah in Elul. I wanted to also thank my business partner Lior and Rimon, the Rimon team for bringing out, Rabbi Glatstein. Lior pushed very hard to get him here, and it's a big zchus to have him, especially in Elul, to have such a big Talmid Chacham with us. It's really a big deal. And then obviously thank you to Rabbi Glatstein for making the trip all the way from New York during Elul, a very busy time. We really very much appreciate your effort for coming. I actually looked up what is the furthest city from New York. Turns out it's Perth, not Sydney, but it's pretty close to the farthest place you can travel from New York. So thank you so much. And the rabbi just arrived this morning. He's already giving Shiurim. He's got a very packed schedule. I've been listening to the rabbi Shiurim for years, listens to hundreds of them. He has a very special and unique way of teaching Torah. He has a way of understanding the deep sources, the Gemara, the Rishonim, Nachronim, and then allowing people like me and who maybe wouldn't have access to that kind of level of Torah, he brings it out in a way that's understandable and you can really relate to it and actually understand it. And I think that's a gift. And he's got a strong Masorah in Torah that underpins him. I even had the privilege this morning of having breakfast with him, and he was learning with his son, doing his homework with his son. So not only does he marbitz Torah fly around the world, but he's also very deeply connected in passing that Torah, that Masorah, onto the next generation. He publishes a lot of books, Sforim. So we have some here today. If anyone wants to purchase, you can purchase afterwards. Just come and have a chat to me. Also, the Rav's mission of coming all the way to Australia is to be Marbis Torah, to spread Torah. And so, obviously, you can listen to him on Torah anytime. There's WhatsApp groups. There's forum. He's also printed these bookmarks so you can put in your sefer. It's got a QR code that you can access all of his stuff. Get notifications when the Shiurim are coming out. So, really, his goal is to spread Torah around the world. And with that, welcome Rabbi Glatstein to come and address us. Sit.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary, for the warm introduction. It's really an honor to be here. This is my second time, not only in Australia, but speaking on behalf of the Rimon company. Rimon, here, you got it over here. It's very interesting. We have two Yehiratzons that we say on Rosh Hashanah. We say you eat a fruit or a vegetable that has the meaning of to multiply or to increase. In Yiddish, they call it merin, or there are other fruits that could be used. And we're mispala, we pray yirbu zechu yosenu, that our merits should proliferate. But we take a Rimon. And by the way, once we're on the topic, I'm going to give a little plug to the Rimon company. What's the official name of the company?
Rimon Advisory.
Rimon Advisory. Okay. So, it's very interesting. The most famous song in Judaism is Dip the Apple in the Honey, Make a Bracha Loud and Clear. Dip the apple. You know the song, yeah? I always say the more well-known something is, usually the more wrong it is, and people never think about it. Because actually, you're not allowed to make the bracha on the apple. Why? Because if you have an apple and you have a Rimon, the halacha is you have to make the bracha on the Shivas Haminim. So you're really not allowed to make the bracha on the apple. So it's dip the apple in the honey, don't make a bracha loud and clear, because you already made it on the Rimon. So at the very beginning of the year, we learned the prominence of the Rimon, and Gary and Lior are dedicated not only to helping grow this company, but also to help spread the word of Torah. And I'm the grateful beneficiary to share with you some very important and timely thoughts. I want to speak about a topic today. Really, this topic is an unprecedented topic in Jewish history. And the first thing we have to know is that there's a principle, Ein chadash tachas hashamsh. There's nothing new under the sun. Like, there's no topic you could come up with and then say, hey, the Torah probably doesn't speak about this topic. This topic is too technologically advanced for the Torah to speak about it. There's no such thing. Every subject that you could possibly imagine, you will find the answer directly in the Torah. I'll just give you off the bat. People talk about artificial intelligence, and they want to know, does the Torah speak about artificial intelligence? I say, come on, Torah speak about artificial intelligence. The Torah was given 3,300 years ago, and by the way, in the year 2448. The Chida writes, 2448, in Hebrew is chibatam, chibasam, his love for them. In the year, God's love for the Jewish people, the word chibasam is numerically valued, 2448. That's the year God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. It's well before any technology. What could the Torah possibly say about computer or artificial intelligence? But if you think about it, now they have they have a technology. You walk into the house, you say, hey, Alexa, hey, Siri, turn on the light, turn off the light, I'm cold, I'm hot, and it just happens. Are you allowed to activate artificial intelligence on Shabbos? Is that considered a malacha? You're not doing anything, you're just talking. Is activating a technology through speech considered a malacha? You say, well, would the Torah talk about that? It sounds very complex. It's actually very simple. Because in this week's Parsha, actually, it's in this week's Parsha, come to think of it. There's a prohibition, lo sachsom shar bedisho. You're not allowed to muzzle an animal while it's threshing. While the animal's threshing in your field, you can't muzzle it. You have to let it eat while it's working. So the Gemara discusses a case whether while the animal is working, instead of putting an actual muzzle on it, you're going to yell at the animal, and that shout will stop the animal from eating, so you're muzzling the animal with words. Is that considered a prohibition? Are you violating muzzling the animal? So the Gemara in Bava Metzia says it's machloikas, it's a dispute. If I'm saying a word and I'm not translating it well, just let me know. Okay? If the Gemara brings a dispute between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, whether yelling at an animal to muzzle it is a violation of the prohibition of you're not allowed to muzzle an animal while it's threshing. And the Gemara's conclusion is that you're not allowed to yell at the animal, because even though normally speech is considered not an action, in halacha, dibur, speech, is lav she'im boi ma'aseh, is a lav that is not considered an action. So just a little quick background. There are two categories of prohibitions in the Torah. Some of them, if we had a court system, we would administer lashes if we warned the person, and some of them we couldn't give any kind of physical punishment because it's not considered an act. Normally, dibur, words, is not considered an act. It's called lav she'ein boi ma'aseh, a prohibition that does not have an act. However, when it comes to muzzling the animal by yelling at it, since your words are creating a physical response of the animal, that's considered words that produce an act, therefore it's considered an act. Okay? Rav Moshe Feinstein, the leading halachic authority of the 20th century, he wrote in 1978 in a responsa that if science would ever invent a technology that could be activated by somebody's voice, so again, this is going back, over 40 years, Rav Moshe said they don't have this yet. But Rav Moshe thought of it. Can you imagine? If you want to know who invented artificial technology, Rav Moshe Feinstein. He said, if scientists would ever invent a technology where you could speak to it and it would do a malacha, it would be prohibited on Shabbos. Why? Because words that produce an act are considered an act. So here there's a perfect example. You would think there's nothing the Torah could possibly say about artificial intelligence, and the answer is it's as old as the hills. It already discussed this 1,500 years ago. There is a topic, though, that we have very little precedent and information about, and that is the subject of the ethics of war, the ethics of fighting a Jewish war. Do we need to be concerned for the lives of quote-unquote innocent civilians, okay? So I want you to put aside your personal beliefs about this war. Because innocent civilians, they voted in this regime. They celebrated the massacre. But I want you to put aside your personal feelings on whether you think these civilians are innocent or not, and look at it as an academic issue, do we need to be concerned with the death of innocent civilians when we're fighting a war to protect the lives of our citizens? Is that something we need to be concerned about? We know the world is up in arms. Far too many innocent civilians. Do we need to be concerned about that? How do we view that? Should we be sympathetic? Should we be empathetic? Should we be looking for an immediate ceasefire? And I want to analyze this from a halachic perspective, because we all have sort of instinctive feelings about it. And like every subject in halacha, while we're entitled to have an opinion, but at the end of the day, God gave us the Torah, and we are challenged to perceive everything in our life from the perspective of the divine, and that is God who created the world and created mankind, and He created morality. We have to submit our own personal beliefs to what Hashem asks of us, which we can only understand through the giving of the Torah to the Jewish people. So the first question is like this: does the Torah have what to say about how to fight a war? You have to understand this is unprecedented, because from the day that Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first temple, we're going back more than 2,000 years ago, we never had an army. We never had real sovereignty. We never had to deal with the question of a Jewish army, a Jewish war. What are the ramifications of going to war at the sake of killing quote-unquote innocent civilians? So, a man by the name of Rav Shaul Yisraeli, who lived from 1909 to 1995, wrote the single most influential essay on Jewish ethics that sent shockwaves throughout the land of Israel. He wrote, now just to give you a little bit of a background for his history, he grew up in the Belarus. His father was exiled for teaching Torah underground. In 1933, Rav Shaul was caught by the Polish underground, and his life was saved by Rav Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Kook. Rav Yisraeli later came to Israel. He was a student of Rav Kook. He was a student of Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook, and then ultimately he became the Rosh Hashiva of Merkaz Harav. He wrote, Judaism does not have moral requirements when it comes to fighting war. To the point where there's a large segment of the Jewish population in Israel who subscribes to this ideology. And the reason why he writes this is because where are we supposed to look to see what Judaism believes about fighting a war? We don't have any precedent. And therefore he created an ideology that Jewish war is subject only to international law, to something called the Covenant of Humanity. And whatever the United Commonwealth of Humanity believes is moral and just, those are the guidelines we need to adhere to. And anything that is considered unjust, we are subject to. So in other words, if the world believes that we have to spare the life of innocent civilians, even though they're harboring terrorists, then we have to spare their lives. If the world believes that you're only allowed to kill innocent civilians if the terrorists are embedded in them, that's the way we have to follow. In other words, we are not subject to Torah law, we are subject to international morality, which is something what he dubs the Covenant of Humanity. Now this sounds very unusual to someone who has a background in Torah study, because one of the fundamental tenets of Judaism is that the Torah is a Toras Chaim. What does it mean the Torah is a Toras Chaim? It means two things, two very important things. Number one, this is very important. I'm here in Australia now, and in America it's 11 p.m. So I would be hitting the sack at about this time. And there might be some people who are still learning in New York for another hour or two, or maybe a bit more. But for the most part, everyone's going to sleep. Well, it's a good thing you're learning now, because we believe that what upholds the world, one of the pillars that the world stands on, more than one of the pillars, the central pillar that the world stands on is the study of Torah. One of the reasons why God created time zones is so that every moment of the day, someone is studying Torah. And if there would be a moment that nobody's studying Torah, the world would cease to exist. This is what Reb Chaim Volozhiner taught, that the Torah is literally pumps the vitality into the world. If there would be a moment that nobody's studying Torah, the world cannot exist. So, therefore, the time zones are staggered. What time is it now in Israel? What day is it now in Israel, right? But when the Jews in New York are going to sleep, the Jews in Israel are waking up, and you guys are just getting going. This way, there's always someone in the world studying Torah. That's one meaning, that the Torah that we have is a Torah's Chaim. However, there's another meaning. Torah's Chaim means that there is nothing in our lives that the Torah does not have guidelines and direction for us. From the moment we wake up in the morning to how we tie our shoe. Which shoe do you put on first? Which shoe do you tie first? There is no act that we do that is too important or too trivial for the Torah to give us direction of how to lead our lives. So we have to believe the Torah does have what to say about the morality of the ethics of war. So there was a rabbi, controversial rabbi, named Rabbi Shlomo Goren, who is a great scholar, who is very courageous. He fought in the Haganah, he fought with the IDF, he was the chief chaplain of the IDF, and the later chief rabbi of Israel. He created a major work on the ethics of war called Meshiv Halacha. He really invented the modern concept of the ethics of war. And it's based on the following. Now, I will say, it's quite tolerant, and most leading authorities today have a different view than Rav Goren on what the ethics of war are. But just for the sake of your understanding of the subject, let me share with you a little bit about it. Rav Goren was a scholar in terms of the various texts of the different editions of the Shas. So, for starters, one of the questions about the ethics of war is, when it comes to halacha, can you learn halacha from the narratives in the Chumash? You see, because in general, we learn halacha from the Gemara. The Gemara is the main body of the oral law. Most halacha, if not all the halacha, is learned from the Gemara. Usually, you can't learn halacha from the narrative of the Chumash. The Chumash are stories. Maybe we could learn perspective and ethical behavior, but to learn halacha straight from the narrative of Chumash, it's very questionable whether we're allowed to do something like that. Let me give you an example. Where in the Tanakh can we learn some of the value system of the ethics of war? If you look in Sefer Shmuel, Shmuel Aleph, Perek Tesvav, we have the war of Shaul against Amalek. So Shaul is fighting Amalek, and the problem was, embedded among the Amalekim were the Keni. The Keni were the family of Yisrai. Yisrai was the father-in-law of Moshe, and Shaul needed to eradicate Amalek. One of the mitzvahs of the Torah is to eradicate Amalek. We read about it at the end of this week's Parsha, Parshas Kiseitze. So Shaul has a problem. His problem is, if he's going to destroy Amalek, the family of Yisrael was embedded among where Amalek lived in the south of Israel. So the pasuk says, "Vayomer Shaul al Keni." Shaul said to the Keni, "Lechu suru redu mitach Amalechi." Get out of here, run away. Peno sevchaimai. You may get destroyed with them. So what do you call this? This is like the forerunner of the system of door knocking. What does the Israeli army do? Well, then when they think that there's a terrorist in a building, so what do? Against their best interest, they send down leaflets and they say, "All you innocent civilians, run away, run, run, run. Only terrorists should stay here in the building." That's what they do. Is that advisable? Is that for the benefit of the security of the citizens of Israel? No, probably not, but that's what they do. They send leaflets. They send text messages. Or, by the way, many of the citizens, they don't want to run. They don't want to go anywhere. They want to basically, and sometimes against their own will, and sometimes to protect the terrorists, they want to stay there. So you know what they do? Israel will drop a bomb that makes a lot of noise and doesn't cause destruction. So then everybody runs away, and they're able to get the citizens to run away, and the terrorists stay behind, and then they're able to go after their targets. The forerunner of this door-knocking system is what the Navi tells us, that Shaul sent word to the Keni, before we go and destroy Amalek, you Keni, you get lost so that we don't kill any innocent civilians. So there's a question in halacha: can you learn halacha from narrative in Chumash? That's a very important question when it comes to halacha. So in any event, in a nutshell, I'm sure you're all familiar with a teaching in the Mishnah and Sanhedrin in the beginning of Chelak. On Daf Lamed Zayin, the Gemara discusses the following subject. When God created the world, He created animals. He created cows. How many cows did Hashem create? Presumably, millions. How many? Noach brought 2 cows into the Teva. Actually, brought 7, right? But God created many cows, many horses, many insects, many Rimons, many of everything. But He only created one man. Lefikach nivra ha'adam yechidi. Therefore, man was created by himself. Why? Lelamed shekol hama'abed nefesh achas mi Yisrael mala olav hakasav keilu ibed oila male. Anyone who kills one Jewish soul, he's like he destroyed the whole world. That's the Mishnah. God created countless of all the various species, but He created one man to teach that if somebody wastes one Jewish life, it's like they destroyed the whole world. But the Rambam, when the Rambam codifies this Gemara, listen to the words of the Rambam. Lelamed shekol hama'abed nefesh achas min ha'olam. Anyone who takes one life, not only one Jewish life, one life, it's like they destroyed the whole world. So what is the accurate text of the Talmud? Does the Talmud mean to say God created one man because the value of Jewish life is the highest value? Or does the Gemara mean the value of human life is the highest value? We all know when it comes to halacha, if somebody, the mitzvos are all very important. We try to keep all 613 mitzvos. How many seeds in the Rimon? Yeah, 613, something like that. I've counted. You can look on Torah anytime. I have a whole shiur about how many seeds. By the way, where does it say there's 613 seeds in the Rimon? Nowhere. The Malbim. Can you imagine? 150 years ago. But in any event, we have to keep all the mitzvahs of the Torah. But what if somebody's life is on the line? What if somebody's life is in danger? What's more important, keeping the dictates of the Torah or saving a Jewish life? L'chai b'hem. Jewish life reigns supreme, except for the 3 cardinal sins: idolatry, adultery, and immorality. Jewish life reigns supreme. Okay, so that means the highest. So what if a Sefer Torah was burning on Shabbos? Would you be allowed to put out a fire on Shabbos to save a Sefer Torah? No, you can't. You can't desecrate Shabbos to save a Torah. Could you desecrate Shabbos to save a Jewish life? Of course, you're obligated to desecrate Shabbos to save a Jewish life. That means, in Judaism, the highest value is Jewish life. Then Shabbos, then the rest of the mitzvahs. What about human life? What is the value of human life in Judaism? Okay, so it depends what the text of the Talmud is. Does the Talmud mean God created one man to teach the supreme value of Jewish life or the supreme value of human life? So it's a very interesting machlokes. What is the most important pasuk in the Torah? It's machlokes Rabbi Kiva and Ben Azai. Rabbi Kiva says the most important pasuk is love your neighbor like yourself. V'ahavta le re'acha. Re'acha means a fellow Jew. Halachically, love your neighbor like yourself. Love your fellow Jew like yourself. But Ben Azai says, no, that's not the most important pasuk in the Torah. The most important pasuk in the Torah is Zeh Sefer Toldos Ha'adam, that man was created in the image of God, the value of human life. So there's always a great debate in Judaism. Jewish life is of supreme value. Human life is important, but how important is human life? And part of the ethics and the morality of war is recognizing that, yes, Jewish life is of supreme value, but human life in general is also of great, great value in the eyes of the Torah. So certainly our own family, our own brothers, fellow Jews, their life will be most important, but human life is very important. Human life is of supreme importance. We would never celebrate the death of our enemies. What we see, even recently in Jordan, they had fireworks and they had great celebration when a few Jews were killed on Allenby Bridge. We would never do that. We would never celebrate the death of our enemies. So human life has value. Jewish life has supreme value. But the question is, how far do we have to go to protect civilians of our enemy at the cost of our own safety? Is there any episode in the Chumash that we could look at? How much time do I really have? 5 minutes? 6 minutes. Wow. Okay. 10? I took it. Okay. So, okay. There is one episode of Torah that maybe speaks volumes regarding the ethics of morality and what our responsibility is. We have the story of Shechem. So Shechem was the son of Chamar, and he sees Dinah. He wants Dinah, and he takes her, he violates her, he tells his father he wants to marry her, but he abducted and violated Dinah. Come Shimon and Levi, come Dinah's brothers, and what do? They wipe out the city of Shechem. Okay. So the Maharal of Prague, in his commentary on the Chumash, the Gur Aryeh asks, how were Shimon and Levi allowed to wipe out the whole city? Only Shechem violated Dinah. The rest of them, they're innocent civilians. So, says the Maharal, that they were allowed to do so. And the reason is, because since Shechem, who's a member of another nation, antagonized our people, even though he's only one of them, but he started, so now we're permitted to go to war. And when we're permitted to go to war, it's very difficult to start interviewing the people and saying, okay, please submit your paperwork to Global Entry, and we're going to now look through your background to see whether you pass the test or not. This is the way war is fought. Even though the Torah does say, when you approach a city, you need to call out in peace, that's true. When the Jewish people are taking the land of Israel, they have to first make a gesture of peace, or if they're going through a discretionary war, they have to gesture peace. That's if they did not violate and come out and do anything wrong to us. But in this scenario, when Shechem, a member of a foreign nation, attack the Jewish people, we're allowed to go to war. Now, their question is, does that mean everyone is liable, or does that just mean that we're allowed to go to war and it's very hard to differentiate between innocent and guilty, so we'll do as the best we can, and if we can't do a perfect job, so be it. But this Maharal is considered a basis for the allowance that when there's an attack against the Jewish people, which calls for response, we now don't have to say, okay, we're going to take a census and we're going to go into Gaza and we're going to start doing we're going to take a census. Who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? You can't do that. There's no way for a war to be fought that way. No war in history has ever been fought that way. Now, does that mean everyone has collective responsibility, or is it that we have to do the best we can, but if that means that there are going to be casualties, then so be it? That's a question in halacha. So this Maharal is considered a basis for license, that when the Jewish people's lives are endangered and somebody violates, so to speak, the trust, then we're allowed to go to war against them. It's very hard to discuss this topic in such a short amount of time, but I'm just giving you some basic principles. I want to share with you a very interesting Yerushalmi. And this is a Yerushalmi that Rav Goren certainly marshaled, and it's something that is very worthy to think of. This is a Yerushalmi that's found in Masechta Shumais. So if you go home today and they ask, what you learned today? You say, I learned a Yerushalmi in Shumais. Okay? What's the halacha? Somebody puts a gun to your head and says, either somebody goes to Ruvain, either kill Shimon or we're going to kill you. Are you allowed to save your own skin by killing someone else? According to Jewish law, no, you can't do that. Because by killing, what you're basically doing is, you're saying that my life is more important than his life. We have no right to take into our own hands that our blood is redder than someone else's blood. Okay? So you can't kill someone else to save your own life. What if they say, we're going to push you on Shimon. If you don't allow us to push you on Shimon, we're going to kill you. Could you allow yourself to be pushed onto somebody else to save your own life? Yes. Why? Because you're not taking the other person's life into your hands. You are merely being an instrument in someone else's hands. That's permitted. Okay. Next scenario. What if you're in a city? They surround the city. And they say, Ruvain, here's the deal. Either you give us someone in the city for us to kill, or we're killing out the whole city. Is Ruvain allowed to give somebody to be killed to save everyone in the city? Can't do it. But then everyone's going to die. Doesn't matter. You can never take and decide who you're going to give over. You can give over the most wicked person in the city. You can't do that. You can't play God. You can't choose who should be given over to save everybody's life.
So in the Tanakh, when they did that, was that
what if they say, we want Pliny, we want so-and-so. Give over so-and-so, or we're going to kill everyone.
Probably, yes.
Then you're allowed to give him over. That's the story of Sheva ben Mechri. You're allowed to. Why? Because you're not playing God. You're not choosing them, the person. They chose the person. Okay? So you got that? So in other words, if they say, you can't choose someone's life to save everybody else's life. But if they chose someone and say, give us so-and-so, otherwise we're going to kill everyone, you're allowed to give so-and-so. Okay, here's the story. It's Yerushalmi and Shumais. There was a man by the name of Ula bar Kosev. The government said, we want him. They go to Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi. They surrounded the city. They said, Ula bar Kosev. They said, Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi, give us Ula bar Kosev, or we're going to kill everyone. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi, he figures he has no choice. He goes over to Ula bar Kosev. He says, listen, pal, either way you're dying. So why don't you allow us to give you over, because otherwise we're all going to die. So Ula bar Kosev said, you're right. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi gave over Ula bar Kosev. That's Yerushalmi. Says Yerushalmi, every single day Eliyahu Hanavi would reveal himself to Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi. He would no longer reveal himself to Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi, because Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi delivered Ula bar Kosev. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi says to Eliyahu, what did I do wrong? Isn't the halacha that if they select someone, then I'm allowed to give his life over to save everybody? Eliyahu Hanavi said, you're right. You're allowed to. You're right, you're allowed to. But it's not righteous. You're allowed to. But velav mishnas chasidim. So from this Yerushalmi, Rav Goren derived that when it comes to life, you can't say, well, the halacha is we're allowed to do it. You always have to take extra measures and go above and beyond the call of duty to try to save Jewish life, or to try to save life in general. From this Yerushalmi, Rav Goren derived a principle in Jewish ethics, that it's not merely governed by halacha, but you always have to, so to speak, jump through hoops to try to ensure that you don't take somebody's life unnecessarily. And of course, the Gemara tells us that even though the Sanhedrin had to sometimes administer a death penalty, but if they did so more often than once every 70 years, they were considered a murderous court. Now, I'm going to end with this. Chazon Ish asks on this Yerushalmi, what in the world was Rabbi Shua ben Levi supposed to do here? So what, he should have let everybody die? What would you say the Israeli army should do? Imagine if they got word, Sinwar is here in this building, and you could kill him, but by doing so, you're going to have to kill some hostages. What would you do?
They might have had this situation.
They may have had that situation. What do you think the halacha would say about that? Keeping this man alive means all of Israel is in peril.
They Jewish hostages?
Jewish hostages. Yeah, what would you say about that? Okay, what should you do halachically? Okay, so Chazon Ish asks on this Yerushalmi, I'm sorry I'm going over, what was Rabbi Shua ben Levi supposed to do? He has no alternative. Either he gives over Ula bar Kaisef or everyone dies. So what do you mean it's not righteous to give over Ula bar Kaisef? So what's the alternative? Chazon Ish says something amazing. He says when it comes to these type of impossible ethical dilemmas, there's always a third option. And that option is Tzarech lehispalel sheyatzilehu Hashem. Halacha sometimes dictates that when you don't know what to do, and you don't know what action to take, you're morally obligated to pray that God should bail you out of being in this situation. And this may be a principle that needs to be utilized in many of the situations that we encounter even today. So there are probably many ethical and moral dilemmas that the IDF faces probably every day. And there may be a halachic direction that's the letter of the law, and even so, it's incumbent upon all of us that we should be praying that Hashem should release the hostages, and they shouldn't have to make these tough decisions. And this is just a little bit really of a flavor and a taste of some of the principles involved in how to view these situations. So as they say, Yoser mima shani karasi l'fanecha kasav kan. There's a lot more to talk about, but this is just a small taste. I thank you for your kind attention, and I wish you all bracha v'atzlacha. Thank you. Okay.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.